All right, let's join a RISE analyst, Amadi, and policy strategist and former managing director, chief executive officer of Nigeria Aviation Handling Company, Baba Yusuf, to help us analyze and unpack all of the stories you've been hearing before we went on that break. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. Dr. Sam Amadi, let me start with you. Try to unpack what you've been hearing from Bola Tinubu, the flag bearer of the APC, who says, that he will bring back hope in 2023. In other words, renewed hope 2023. Of course, he talks about a whole lot of things: the economy, agriculture, energy, and all of that. And of course, Atiku, who's continued to harp on the need to restructure and to put the private sector at the forefront of economic development. What do you say to these?
Well, I think we've seen a consistent message in this week. More details. Part of the initial problem with the campaigns commenced was the fact that we didn't hear a lot more about what these candidates intend to do. It looks like the model of campaign 2022-2023 would be town halls and focus group meeting, which really enables candidates to engage more meaningfully, kind of back and forth, answer questions than the usual big rallies where mostly hired crowds come, yell, shout, rejoice, and then go home perhaps with some goodies. So this is a development that is good. We're more into focus group, town halls, and smaller group contacts. Now again, Ahmed Tinubu, hope renewed. I think that's a deliberate attempt to hack to the Hope 93 messaging and the social democratic, push of that very successful campaign by Mko Abiola. People have accused the ticket of paradise, if you like, or copying Abiola's Hope 93. But even if they did not, clearly they recognize the importance of that symbolism. And so hope renewed could mean two things. At the level of a APC government post-Buhari, it could be a statement around change. We are trying to renew the hope that maybe we did not quite deliver. It also brings us back to the great Hope 93, and Mko Abiola was one of those who fought for that mandate in a way. But then specifically, I think he has been saying things that are more effective in terms of look at the problem of this country. He has, today with Khan, he spoke about his pedigree in Lagos, giving reassurances that he was not going to, he's not the kind of person who would Islamize Nigeria or those things. So Atiku Abubakar, by being consistent, in my view, and maybe has perhaps the most coherent, manifesto out there. Why do I say coherent? Because it's really kind of aligns with his private sector, what I call FM, free market model of economics. We may argue with some of the ideas he pushed across, whether, for example, privatization, the outcome has not been very good, but again, it's perfectly aligns with his policy in terms of the economics of it. So he is doing great, trying to present himself as somebody who really, not just like a written script, but somebody who truly understands the policy contour of the free market model, which involves mostly allowing fix the price and allow the private sector to lead. And so I think it's consistent. What we'd like to see more in the future from them will be some basics around how to, and then deal with some of the complexities that their policies trigger. Maybe that's what their proxies and people who speak, a spokesperson will take up that. But essentially, we're getting to hear the right message this week. And hopefully, they deepen the conversation, media people push back, and of course, interrogate them more. We should see more robust questioning. But again, basically, I think this is a better campaign than we had 2 weeks ago.
Baba Yusuf, what do you think? Atiku is focusing on how the private sector should be, greater in development. It should play a bigger role in development. He is also talking about allowing the market upper hand, free market, let the market determine prices, and all of that. Bola Tinubu for the APC, on the other hand, is talking about less import-dependent economy, Let's grow Nigeria. He's also talking about taxes, higher tariffs, luxury taxes as economic policy for his government to help improve the Nigeria economy. He's talking about double GDP, I think 10% he said, or double GDP growth, and all of that. What do you make of all of this? Are these policies based on huge assumptions? Are they realistic? Do they align with current structural limitations in the country?
Thank you very much. It's the season. All the candidates are trying to, as much as possible, first of all, comfort the populace that they are the right candidates to take the reins of office 2023 and take Nigeria to the promised land. And in doing so, we hear a lot of what I call audacious, if you like, ambitious manifestos and blueprints ruled out. There is nothing wrong with that. If anything, it puts them, on the hot spot to deliver. However, the situation in the country is so serious and dire that we would like to hear, as we proceed, more distilled and more what I call realistic promises, and within the realm of the manifestos and blueprints, things that will actually relate with our realities. And I give examples. For example, we know the current global economic realities as well as the Nigerian reality. When I hear the candidate for APC, Jagaban Bola Ahmed Tinubu, talking about increasing the GDP from the current over $430 billion to over $530 billion by the end of 2023, when the reins of office will be taken over by almost mid-2023 with all the projections. The World Bank projected a growth of 3%. One wonders how that will happen. The same with the presidential candidate for the PDP, Atiku Abubakar. I read somewhere about increasing the GDP to $900 billion by the end of the first tenure. Considering the current debt portfolio of over 42 trillion naira with a debt to GDP ratio of over 23%, one will wonder how realistic it is. Fundamentally, interestingly, they've all spoken about the current multidimensional security situation in the country. In fact, not just the APC and PDP presidential candidates, almost all the presidential candidates, including the NNPP, the Labour Party, have reiterated the importance of security and their priority to tackle security, which is fundamental to the attainment of socio-economic development. However, also in terms of those deliverables, it seems it is highly audacious, not reining to the current realities. What I will expect us as the potential electorates to do is, importantly, like Dr. Sam mentioned, the town hall meetings and the current engagements that are distilled, we should ask the right questions. For example, the realistic nature of goal setting, as we know, is called SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And if we see or we hear these deliverables churned out in rhetorics, we should engage the candidates as to how they intend to achieve these, objectives. For example, tackling insecurity within 6 months, for example. We will also like to hear short to mid-term deliverables with regards to the long-term deliverables. Turning around the economy is, I guess, a mid to long term. But in the short term, also Nigerians would like to hear the succor that they will expect to have while those short to long term socio-economic objectives are being tackled.
All right, great. Dr. Amadi, Tinubu says 2023 fight will define Nigeria's soul, and of course, he goes on to reel out some of the plans that he has for the youth, how he's going to turn around, the youth population in the areas of tech, innovation, that he will, ensure that he uses talented youth, that they will find a place in his administration. Do you think, really, do you believe, especially when you hear Tinubu say that he's going to build on the foundation laid by President Muhammadu Buhari? He's been criticized, of trying to shy away, or distance himself from the Buhari administration, but he's saying confidently, I will build on the solid foundation that the Buhari administration has laid. What say you about this?
Well, I don't think he will build on the solid, if quote-unquote, foundation of Buhari. I think it's political speak, and it makes sense. I mean, look, he needs the support of the state, of the ruling party. I mean, the reason why he has advantage in this election is that he's the candidate of the ruling party. That is not an indefeasible advantage, but it's an advantage. So you don't expect him to basically bankrupt himself of political capital by saying we're going to reinvent. Again, it's politically not coherent. It doesn't sound well. I mean, elections, parties in power, elections are a referendum on the party in power. So if you say that we didn't do well, then you undermine the basis for voting that AP. So it's political, no authority for Amadi to say we're going to build on that foundation. Again, look at it very well. You talked about the growing youth and the population. Yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, rather yesterday, I think, the world got to 8 billion a person, according to the estimation of the UN estimation. So
Nigeria
became 8 billion.
Number 6.
So exactly with Nigeria build in the next 20 to 50 years probably to become excessively overpopulated. Now, one of the issues is youth population. So it comes with hope and dismay. It comes with perhaps more poverty, recklessness, corruption, criminality. It also comes with maybe disruption and reconstruction. So the question then is, can Tinubu's government be the government that can? He's right to say this election is very important. It's key. It's like we are at a threshold to something redemptive or disastrous.
Yeah.
So he's right. But the question then is, if you look at the youth energy and the youth behavior and the youth sense which they are thinking around their country, it's less of transaction, less of the old politics that Tinubu, Atiku, and others have played big in this election, which is the politics of distribution, the politics of transaction, and that action of politics of construction, of building, of future looking forward, human capital investment. Tinubu prides himself as somebody who understands the language of human capital investment. So maybe he thinks that he has, today I heard him, he looked so gung-ho that he can recreate this country. He said he used the word redemption, we did redemption. The question is, if you look at his seeming frailty, look at the backdrop of allegations and profiling, it's really, maybe some people will be cynical as to whether he has got the basics, the competencies, and the presence of mind, and the profile, and the history to break this endless cycle of failure and launch Nigeria into a new era of production, of not transaction politics, but a politics where there's an elite bargain for development.
Okay.
I don't think it's beyond him, but the question is, look, Nigerians are going to ask more questions. Nigerians are going to say, how do we reconcile the past with this renewed hope? And the same will apply to Atiku, to P2B, everybody. So the question is, yes, this is a threshold, but are we really sure that the build-up tells us, gives hope that these guys can really move us to where the Nigerian youth expect, an era of clean politics, era where there's no prerogatives, era of meritocracy, and the era where the focus is on creation and not on sharing and transactions.
Indeed. Baba Yusuf, I mean, we can talk about these audacious plans of the presidential candidates, but some will say, if we do not have a country, what use are these plans and policies we're planning? And that brings me to the question of unity and restructuring. We've heard that from the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, who talked about restructuring the policy to foster unity and stability. We've also heard it from Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the AAC. He says this constitution is not by the people and for the people. We have to take away the constitution. But are you hearing enough to encourage you to say these candidates understand that first, we do have a national issue of cohesion or lack of it?
I think the candidates all understand the depth and importance of the state we are in, one of the most polarized times in our history as a nation. The question is, how serious do they take this? Is this just campaign rhetoric, as we have seen in the past, and then after taking office, the priorities are rejected? What is critical here is, again, I will still speak to the electorate, because politicians come and go. In the past 22 years, we've been hearing catchphrases and campaign promises, and people take office and then we see something different. We only have 4 years for us to demonstrate our anger or make a choice. The point is this: the restructuring conversation, to my mind, has been more or less around the circles of what restructuring is all about. One of the people that have really distilled a little bit down is the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, who, expanded the conversation around true federalism and pointedly mentioned doing this through the constitutional way, autonomy for the state and local government. Of course, the action will be seen after, if and when he wins the election. But my interest, or our focus point, is how is it possible to constitutionally do that? Because if we are talking about true federalism and all that, going by the way and manner the legislature has been acting, if we are really going to address the issue of restructuring wholesome, then we may have a bottleneck with the legislature. We also want to hear the House, again in this case, how the candidates intend to achieve it in consonance or in cohesion with the legislative arm of government, who may be impacted if truly the restructuring will be done in a way and manner that we have all been discussing, including the candidate themselves. So that remains to be seen. Again, the tendency to overpromise and underachieve is the watch phrase for us as electorates, to ask the right questions during these engagements to get specifics as to the House and also the timelines. One of the things that could happen is, people take office and make promises and then keep on pushing the milestone towards the 4-year bar, and then at the end of the 4-year, you have a recalibrated or rehashed promise that it will be delivered after the second term. We hope people will be wiser in asking the right questions and putting the candidate to tasks.
Absolutely, and that's why RISE has the town halls where the right questions are being asked and answers are being given. Whether Nigerians are satisfied or not remains to be seen. Dr. Sam Amadi, let's stay on the issue of unifying Nigeria. Tinubu there at his meeting with the Christian Association of Nigeria, let me quote what he said. He said, look, I want to pick the person who will best help me to govern, not help me to worship. Of course, he's telling the Christians that. Atiku, of course, says he's a unifier. Many people have questioned, of course, what's going on within his own party, questioning his ability and capacity to actually unify. In asking other presidential candidates of other parties, we heard from them at the town hall, for example. Many of them said, look, we're going to stay within the ambits of the rule of law. We're going to ensure that the Constitution is a guiding principle of governance. Let's talk about this unifying the country. Will that be job one for the next president of Nigeria?
Well, they say that the good fences make good neighbors. So Nigeria unity is a slogan that we talk about. Unity cannot go with one Nigeria, all kinds of slogan. But this country is basically at the worst point in history in terms of disunity. Built up to 1960 with the minority crisis, with the Wilkes Commission, the level of disinformation, fake news, and we're living in an age of digital terrorism. So that means any disunity can actually be very expensive. So what the candidates talk about unity. Now let's talk about Amadi Tinubu's statement today. When I heard him today, he really spoke passionately around why he chose as vice president. And he can't fault his argument around dignity, about competence, around trust. But the bigger symbolism, and politics is about symbolism, it's not much about what we think, it's about how people think. And so the presidency is an institution that responds to public opinion and public expectation. So I think he didn't do the job well in terms of explaining how to reassure Christians and non-Christians of that this government would first provide just for everybody. There are issues around state police, issues around state and religion. His own personal history tells a story of inclusion, no doubt about it. But the policies over the years have created disunity, created a sense of perception of threat to one or the other. So what we want to see are policies that tackle the issue. It's around herdsmen, farmers clash. It's around nationality identity. It's around religion and state. He didn't do a good job of focusing. Maybe he said he's going to come back with right. Then Atiku, look, if Atiku says I'm a unifier, or Tinubu says so, I think they are right to the extent that you look at their personality. I mean, they are people who have broad-based coalition.
And other parties say, look, the rule of law is what will ensure
Absolutely.
unity.
I'm coming to the point. So they all, Atiku has the profile to say I'm a unifier. Both forget his domestic issues about marriage across the divides, but more essentially, as vice president, as special candidate, he seemed to have a proclivity of inclusion. But the key question, like my friend on the mentioned, is policy. Good friends make good neighbors. So restructuring, decentralization, federal character, and taking seriously the notion of inclusion. Rule of law, meaning that you want to move from a prerogative privilege-based society to democratic citizenship. The idea that every Nigerian counts equally. So Nigerians' problem now requires revolutionary change. And it's not about war or about irredentism or about separation. No. It's simply the idea that we want to go beyond the divides of the 1960s, 1914, and create a modern Nigerian state that is secular, democratic, egalitarian. And so I want to hear more in the days to come that these candidates move away from their personal symbolism, their personality, they are unifiers, they are open, tolerant, and speak more to how they will undo the things in the last 8 years that have divided us. Lopsided appointments, some kind of insensitivity to religious or ethnic concerns, and the failure, the use of rule of law institutions, administration of justice, not to prosecute those who antagonize others on the basis of equality. We have been running a system that has so many cop-outs for privilege and prerogatives. So what we see, and that's what people like Showore put on the table. They want a Nigeria that's really moved from the past, from hankering to feudal, neo-feudal, religious authorities, and basically embrace citizens, their rights, their well-being, and nothing more. I want to hear that in the days
regardless of where they come from.
Gentlemen, it's 100 days to the elections.
Yes.
We'll continue to have this conversation to sensitize the Nigerian people, but hopefully we'll make a better choice come 2023. But we have to thank you both. Dr. Sam Amadi is a Rise News analyst and, of course, a policy strategist, and former MD CEO of Nigeria Aviation Handling Company, Baba Yusuf. Thank you both for being on the news tonight with us.